Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
go above and beyond.
They become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
with Richard Jacobs.
This is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. My goal is to find top people in their field, usually 1 in 1,000 type people, the geniuses. Today I have Scott A. Johnson. He changed his own life. He had a serious chronic illness, which we'll go into, and he was able to improve his condition without using only traditional medicine. And now he works on with essential oils and aromatherapy, things like that. So we're going to get into his journey, how he was able to help himself, and now he helps other people to do the same. So Scott, thanks for coming. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks, Richard, for inviting me and having me on your show.
Yeah, I want it to be a little bit vague because it's your story. You can tell it better. So if you wouldn't mind, please let people know what happened to you and what did you do to help yourself?
Yeah, many years ago, I was diagnosed with a condition called ankylosing spondylitis. Most people haven't heard of it because it's a pretty rare condition. It's estimated to affect less than 1% of the adult population, but its main manifestations are significant back or neck pain, especially after rest. So like if you've slept overnight, that's when it will tend to flare the most because you've been resting for long periods of time. But it's also a progressive condition that can affect other tissues of the body, heart, lungs, eyes, and various other joints throughout the body. So it's pretty debilitating. It can definitely reduce people's quality of life, possibly even their ability to work, depending on how far it progresses and how well they respond to treatment, how quickly treatment is initiated. But I was fortunate enough to be able to find some natural solutions that helped me to get my condition under control, and I really have been symptom-free and considered in remission now for several years, which has been a great blessing.
Is it a autoimmune disease, or can you say a little bit more about it?
It's considered an autoinflammatory condition, which is similar to autoimmune, and it's just a slightly different molecular mechanism in which it occurs, but yes, it is, and in some ways, it's considered to have a genetic predisposition. If people have the HLA-B27 gene, that's commonly found in people who have the condition. But yeah, it definitely is something that attacks the body's tissues and causes some serious disruption.
And in Western medicine, what's the treatment protocol that typically they want to give you?
The start is to typically give you a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, and a common one is indomethacin. So they'll start you on something like that, and that usually helps to reduce that inflammation that you have in your body in a lot of people, but it doesn't tend to be a permanent solution. And it has some other things that are associated with it, such as ulcers. That was my case. And really what drove me into looking for alternatives was I started to have severe stomach pain after being on the indomethacin for a short time. And it was an ulcer that it was causing. And so I first wanted to correct that ulcer. I felt like, after conversations with my rheumatologist, that I had to choose between back pain or stomach pain because I didn't want both at the same time. And then after those NSAIDs don't work, they can have other treatment options. Sometimes they'll do steroid injections into the spine. They can also use disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs. That's another common treatment. In rarer cases, surgery is something that's done. But there's a host of different drugs that are used in kind of a progressive manner depending on how the person is responding and what kind of treatment they need to help them maintain somewhat of a quality of life.
Yeah, it's terrible. It sounds like there's no real answer or understanding of the underlying, disease process, what's going on, and it sounds like no real cure for it.
No, there's not. And I think that's why so many people, when they hear that I have mine in remission, their jaw kind of drops. If they have the condition or they know somebody that has it, there's not a lot of hope for those people, because it is just a progressive medications that are given, and you're trying to slow symptoms, but you're really not getting to the root of the problem. You're not getting the progression to stop. And so it is something that's very difficult for somebody to be diagnosed with and feel confident that they will maintain a high quality of life unless they initiate some lifestyle changes and the use of some natural solutions that are really helpful.
So how and why were you different? What gave you the insight to look for a different way?
I think it was just almost out of desperation. Like I said, I felt like I had to choose between some pretty severe stomach pain or the back pain that I was experiencing, and I just didn't want to do that. I thought there has to be a better way to accomplish control and management of this illness that I had. And so that got me searching. I spent a lot of time searching on the internet and in books, trying to find some kind of solution or answer to, first, the stomach issues that I was having. And I did find that and was able to correct that. And that got me really excited. And I thought, well, if I can do that for my stomach, then what else can I do to help my back? There's got to be something that'll help my back as well. And through painstaking research and some trial and error and experimentation, I found some natural solutions that were able to help with the back pain as well. And it just progressively got better until I can confidently say that I haven't had any symptoms and I feel like it's in remission.
So to help your stomach, was that more diet, and then the back was that where the aromatherapy came in, or how did it come in?
It was the stomach was actually a long used herbal remedy called deglycyrrhizated licorice root, or DGL for short, and it's one known to help stimulate the natural production of the stomach lining in the stomach to protect against the acidic environment in there and to promote overall digestion. So that's what that was. And then there was some herbs and supplement combinations that I used for the ankylosing spondylitis, and also some topical essential oils at that time that just gave some great relief. And so it was a combination of a lot of different things. And it really was a lot of trial and error and figuring out what was the right amounts of things to take. But I feel fortunate that I was able to find those solutions and to see some progress and see the benefits of them.
So tell me some of the parts of the journey. How do people, when I think of aromatherapy, I think of, this eucalyptus oil or lavender. You can smell it. It smells nice. You relax. But how do you go further and find out even what's possible with aromatherapy and with herbs? Like, maybe go into some detail on what these things can do, and what are some areas that you looked into that people can look into to find out more?
Yeah, initially when it comes to natural medicines or natural solutions, it can be pretty frustrating because you look online and there are so many options, and there's also a lot of conflicting information. That was one thing that I found very frustrating, as I would read one book and then I go to the next book and it would say something entirely different. So it was really difficult for me to kind of narrow in on what I should do. But ultimately, I found what worked best for me is to look at the traditional use of essential oils or herbal remedies, whatever it may be, and then try and find some supportive evidence in the form of published science to determine what would be the best approach. And so that's really been what I've focused my career on, is to merge those ancient healing arts with modern science in order to show how to use them more effectively and safely. I think that's probably why I'm so driven in writing books, because I don't want people to have the same kind of frustration and maybe give up when they might have a solution waiting right at the end of their research. And so I write a lot of books to help people understand how to use them, to leverage the thousands of hours that I've put into research and education, and all of the experience and put that into an understandable, easily digestible format so people can learn from that much quicker than it took me to get the same kind of knowledge. And I think that's what's a key, is to really find an expert that you can trust. And I would say find more than one, because our experiences and our life definitely shapes how we use a lot of the essential oils and other traditional solutions. Find a couple of people you can trust and devour their information, whether they have it in book form or they're publishing it online. However you can get that information, focus on it and really become your own expert in how to help yourself be the best healthy self that you can.
Yeah, out of the sources of info, which ones tended to be better for you? Was it like one-on-one interaction with masters, or was it books? Or
I spent most of my time in books. I got several books from well-known natural healers, and I read those books. And then once I got past reading their books, I actually started to look in published literature. So I just went to PubMed, the National Institutes of Health, and I would search various terms and solutions together and see what the published literature found and said. And so I spent a lot of time in kind of both ways. I've spent time with colleagues too, and in one-on-one personal conversations to learn as well. But it's been a lot of time with self-study for the most part, and reading those who have published information both in the scientific or research realm, as well as clinicians and other healers that have a lot of experience and a lot to give to people who can learn from them.
So when you were reading things online, there was a lot of conflicting info. What about when you were reading books? Was it still the same? And then when you got to the level of papers, scientific papers, again, was there conflicting info, or was that where things really started to coalesce?
Yeah, you still saw some conflicting information in the books. Online, I would say, had the most conflicting information. The books, not as much. There was a lot of consensus, or there was a lot of similar concepts throughout those books. And then when you got to the published research, there was fewer and far between to have conflicting information. Conflicting research, often you would look at it and there was a methodology flaw, or there was maybe they used a poor quality product in it that was obvious, that would kind of confound their results or produce conflicting results. But in general, there was a lot of consensus when you looked at published papers as well.
Are there clinical trials for various aromatherapy substances or essential oils, or is this more they're looking into one particular thing, the effects of dandelion root on X, for instance? Yeah.
There are more clinical trials are emerging in essential oils. The vast majority of the research currently, if you go and search, you'll find over 20,000 studies on essential oils, but the vast majority of those are going to be laboratory or like animal research that's been performed. But there is a significantly growing body of evidence in relation to clinical studies, and sometimes it is like what you're saying. They're kind of investigating one particular oil and what it does. Lavender is a great example. There's lots and lots of studies on lavender and its ability to help with anxious feelings or anxiety and nervousness. So sometimes it is that. Other times they're testing them for all kinds of different conditions that we're affected by, both physical and mental and emotional conditions. The interesting thing is that a lot of these clinical studies, there's a lot of those that are found in countries that have a long tradition of essential oils. Persia has a long tradition of using or distilling essential oils, and so not surprisingly, Iran, modern day Persia, has a significant amount of clinical research that goes on that they publish, and we can learn from what they're doing there.
So what are some of the basic concepts that would be helpful for people to know when they're dealing with their own condition?
Well, I think patience is one thing that people have to first and foremost go into it, because you can't expect a condition that maybe you've had for 4 or 5, maybe 10 or 15 years to start reversing overnight, or you can't expect to feel better overnight. You're generally going to just have to take some patience, because most natural solutions are not really trying to stop something from happening in the body as much as they're just supporting normal, natural, and healthy processes that keep us in that state of homeostasis or good health that all of us want to be in. But I think that it's also a good thing to, again, look and see what a couple of different experts, at least two, but maybe more experts, are saying will help with that particular condition, and giving it a good try. You can't, I tried it for 3 days and I didn't notice anything, and just throw it to the curb. Continue working with it, because sometimes it's going to take months, maybe even years, for you to see the progress that you want, but it will slowly come and you'll slowly see benefits.
So if I have a condition, how would I start looking? Would I look up aromatherapy for X, or essential oils for X, or I start with your books, or like, how do I go on this journey to figure out what to do to help myself?
Well, if you're looking for essential oil therapies or aromatherapy, yeah, I would say grab one of my books as a starter, and you'll find many of the common conditions in those books that you can look at and see what the general recommendations are. I think you also need to look at your lifestyle, though, because I don't like it when people just try and substitute a natural solution for what they're using currently that's been recommended a medicine or something like that. That's not really a great approach, because typically our lifestyles get us into a lot of these conditions. It's not always the case, but the way we're eating, the way we're moving, the way that we handle our emotions and stress, those are all really important. And so it really needs to be a lifestyle thing, a lifestyle change. But then you look at what are the general solutions from a dietary supplement or herbal perspective, aromatherapy perspective. What are those things that are recommended that can help us to improve, to see the benefits that we're hoping to see from the changes we make?
Yeah, it's rare that I speak to someone that knows anything about, again, essential oils or aromatherapy. So what's some of the science behind those two? Like, what are some particulars that will give people, some like insight into what they would learn when they read about it?
Well, I think that we have to remember that essential oils are highly concentrated extracts from plants. They're very potent. And so they have the ability to have some significant actions or interactions with the body. The amazing thing to me is that as we continue to study essential oils, we continue to find the methods that they're using, the mechanisms or the pathways that they're using, that they can interact with cell receptors and proteins that are found within the body. They can enter cells because a cell is surrounded by a lipid bilayer, and because that's a fatty substance, essential oils are attracted to fats, and they can not only interact with the outside of the cell, but the inside of the cell, and affect the way that cell's organelles are working and the genes are expressing within that cell. Essential oils can work within specific organ systems and support organ system pathways, or certain pathways that create neurotransmitters or other cytokines, for example, to either reduce those so that we can have a normal inflammatory response within the body. And so we continue to find all this new data and evidence that supports how essential oils are working with these normal functions within the body. And that's what is so great, is because our body is well equipped and innately designed to keep us in a state of health. It doesn't want to be in that state of poor health. And so it has all these systems and mechanisms and ways to protect our health and to keep us in good health. But when we give it something like an essential oil or another natural solution, it can help us to those systems work more efficiently. And so we can enjoy greater periods of health than ill health.
Okay, so I thought with essential oils or aromatherapy, it was just, smelling things. But I mean, since they're plant extracts, I would guess you can drink them, you can rub them on, you can inhale them. I mean, there's many different ways to use essential oils, right?
There certainly is. Inhalation is one of the simplest methods, but all too often I think people discount it because it is so simple. But inhalation, because our sense of smell is the only sense directly connected to the brain, can have some significantly profound effects upon our mood, emotions, and even the way that our body is producing various chemicals and that's what's amazing is, for example, they've done studies on women showing that when they inhale a rose or a geranium essential oil, that just that inhalation alone can trigger mechanisms within the body that helps them to have a greater balance in their sex hormones like estrogen and progesterone. And so we have various ways we can use essential oils. And I think that the way that you're thinking of them is probably what most people think of it, because we use that term aromatherapy, which almost insinuates that we're only going to use them to inhale them, but they can be applied topically. We can apply them when maybe we have sore muscles after we worked out in the gym or went on a run or something, or worked in our garden. We can apply essential oils topically, preferably with some carrier oil like a coconut oil or sweet almond oil or something like that, to help provide relief that way. And then there are a group of them, there are many that can actually be ingested as well. I typically recommend ingesting them inside capsules. You can buy empty vegetable capsules and put a couple drops in those and then fill the rest with an olive oil or another fatty oil and take them that way. So there are many that can be ingested, and clinical research uses them frequently as in capsules to ingest, for example, to help with irritable bowel or to help with anxiety. So that's the great thing about essential oils, is we have multiple ways to use them. And because there's multiple ways, they interact with various different pathways in our body to help support normal physiological and psychological responses within the body.
I guess it's not so different from traditional medicine. They'll use plant compounds. They'll maybe isolate one of the compounds they think is effective. They'll put it in a pill, or some other kind of drug. I mean, this is just, it's similar, but it's keeping all the ancillary compounds that are in a given plant or herb, and you're taking those instead.
Right, and it's really leveraging whole plant chemistry, because you're right that most drugs, they're going to isolate what they determine to be an active molecule within the plant. A lot of our current pharmaceuticals were derived from isolating and then synthesizing plant molecules. But this leaves whole plant chemistry, where we actually call it polypharmacology, because essential oils can contain from a dozen to hundreds of compounds within them. And so you have all of these compounds that are working together, often in a synergistic way, or you might have some minor trace compounds that are buffering a negative effect that might occur if you isolate the one quote unquote active compound within that. And so that's one of the great things about them, is they have so many different compounds that you have a lot of interaction with those and a synergy that can occur to create greater benefits.
So what are some examples of conditions that you've helped people with, or that you've seen or helped, and what kind of substances have helped them?
Yeah, I could actually talk about several of cases or things that I have seen as far as essential oils work. I think that when you look at it, though, we have to first caution that everybody's biologically unique. And so what works for one person is not necessarily going to work for other people. But it is something that we can definitely see results. For example, I would say when we're talking about essential oils, so some of my favorite messages I get, of course, are people who have found my book on ankylosing spondylitis and what I recommend and do myself in order to keep it in shape. So I get messages from all over the world with success stories saying they had hope. But when it's directly talking about essential oils, I've also had several messages from women who have had difficulty conceiving, and they follow some suggestions that are in my books, and then they're able to conceive. I've had them send pictures of their babies and say how grateful they are, which is really one of the reasons I do this is because I love to help other people find greater wellness. But I've also seen people who have had diabetic foot ulcers that were not responding to antibiotic treatment, and they were told by their physician that they would have to have the foot amputated because it was so bad and had so much necrotic tissue. And they're desperate to keep that foot. And so they've tried essential oils and had success and prevented that amputation to former football players that, that's rough on their bodies, especially the linemen, to have better functioning knees because of the essential oils that they choose to put on and that help them. I've also seen people who have had limited movement in their hand due to an injury that involved a crush injury that involved surgery that had to repair it, and they've got better movement. So I really feel like that I'm living my dream by empowering thousands of people to improve their health. I really love it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Anything in the literature that you've seen that maybe you haven't tried, but you're like, we're really surprised to see that you would like to maybe not try it yourself, but you'd like to see in action?
There's always interesting things that people try, researchers that push the limits and try different, something that's unique. One is interesting is they're using an inhalant method that they're piloting it now, and they've published a couple times on it, but they've got a specific grouping of essential oil molecules that they use as an inhalant for people who suffer from migraines. And so they stick a device up their nose and inject the essential oil molecules, the vapors, directly into the nose, and with some success in preventing a migraine from coming on, or even reducing the pain and severity. So that really was intriguing to me. I think that that especially the method of delivery, I would like to have some experience in using that kind of inhalant device that they're working on.
So what's the name of some of your books, and what subjects do they cover? Resources for people listening.
Well, it depends on what they're wanting to do. I think I have a full level of different ways you can use essential oils. I have a smaller version, kind of a Cliff Notes version of how to use essential oils properly, called Surviving When Modern Medicine Fails. That would be for somebody maybe who is brand new and just getting started with essential oils. My most popular one, though, is called Evidence-Based Essential Oil Therapy. And that one is it has a lot more of the research. It summarizes research studies so people can look at it and say, okay, well, this is what the research is saying that particular oil will do. And then for the people who really want to go into a deep dive, especially if you're somebody who's a researcher or a clinician or wants to use this as part of a practice, then that would be Medicinal Essential Oils, which is about a 1,200-page book and has thousands of citations in it to support what's told in it. But then if you're just looking for general nutrition and also how to move better and how to manage stress, I have books that are on that. It's similar title, called The Doctor's Guide to Surviving When Modern Medicine Fails. I have specific books on how to manage ADHD naturally. So the various different type of books, even one on cannabis extracts. So if somebody's interested in how the endocannabinoid system works, I have one called The Endocannabinoid System in Cannabis.
So what do you think is going to be the future of essential oils, near term, and then further than that? Like, who is taking the field to the next level, and what will it, what do you think is going to, do you think it'll show up clinically a lot, or it's going to stay, unfortunately, maybe in Eastern medicine or on the fringe? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's been a recent resurgence of people who want to use natural solutions for their health. And I expect this trend to continue, and more people will take an integrative approach to their health. In fact, just about a year ago, I was asked to write a chapter in a textbook that's meant to give physician students, medical students, a primer on various different natural modalities, essential oils being one of them. So I was privileged to write the chapter for that book it's going to help the physicians of the future have at least a basic understanding of how to use a lot of these natural modalities, or at least how their patients might be using them, because we know that they are. So I think that we'll continue to see essential oils experience growth, and we'll continue to see more of them being incorporated into traditional or westernized conventional medicine systems, because they can work great for very specific circumstances that the medications just maybe don't work as well for. Post-operative nausea is great. Procedural anxieties is another way that we can use them. For discomforts after the procedure, or helping to promote the normal healing and reduce scarring after a surgery is performed. But I think that we already have a group of integrative-minded physicians that are using and incorporating essential oils, and nurses especially like to incorporate them. But that will continue as we get more evidence to support them, that we help physicians and other healthcare professionals understand that they're safe and that they do have a place to work alongside some of the Western options that are being used.
Well, very good, Scott. It's been a good call, and I'm glad that you're looking into these areas when Western medicine is predominant. At least there's other ways to address concerns. So people can pick up your books. Any other ways for them to find out more, or the books are the best start?
You can go to my website. I have a website, authorscott.com, and it has some blogs and information there on various topics, as well as if you're really interested in essential oils, I share regularly on a Facebook page, so you can search Scott A. Johnson, find my Facebook page, and I share regularly the published research, the new research that's coming out on essential oils, so people can consider that as they determine how they want to use essential oils as part of their lifestyle.
Okay, well, very good. Scott, thanks for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Richard. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.